I believe '02. He's 35. He's in the later stages of his career. And a lot of guys who started out in the late '90s, even they're just not playing anymore. Ray Allen's a free agent, but nobody's really calling him. It's really doubtful that somebody's going to pick up the phone and even say for the playoffs. Like it's always been bandied around the last few years that somebody's going to call Ray Allen and say, "Hey, we need a shooter. Ray, you good? You keep it in shape." So Ray is just about swan songed out of here. Mike Miller's in the later stages. Andre Miller's hanging around just because he's a heady player who can still play and lead a team in some stages, but he's analytics nerd fodder. I'll get onto the basketball analytics nerds in a few. But those guys that you grew up with in the second half of the Jordan era, they're basically out, man. They're basically done. Kevin Garnett, he's got a couple years left, and he's actually doing the mentoring thing up in Minnesota. If you're really interested in basketball, there's a good article that Jackie McMullen wrote for ESPN on how Kevin Garnett's mentoring Karl Anthony Towns in Minnesota, and that's rather poignant with the backdrop of Flip Saunders dying, because KG, for all his intensity, for all his assholishness, he loved Flip Saunders. He really loved that dude. There's an interview he did with John Thompson, the old Georgetown coach, on TNT in 2005 or 2006, I think, after the Timberwolves went to the conference finals the year before. The next season, just everything kind of went downhill for them, and Flip was fired a couple months into the season. And on that interview, KG is just really torn up about that. He's reacting like it's almost like when you're a kid and your parents tell you you've got to transfer schools, and you don't understand and you don't want to do it, and all your friends are there. That's how KG looked. He just looked like defeated, like his friends were gone. And things were bad that year, but losing Flip Saunders hurt him then, and then losing Flip Saunders as a coach. Like all the interviews that were done with people who knew Flip, Kevin McHale, other teammates of Flip's at Minnesota, Tom Izzo, the players on the Timberwolves now, Kevin Garnett wasn't in any one of them, because he's just that guy who doesn't want to get emotional on camera. And he put up the Instagram photo, and that was it. Kevin Garnett was not going to talk on video about Flip Saunders because the dude meant too much to him. But that's beside the point. Kevin Garnett is one of those guys that's in the later stages. Paul Pierce, same era, same stages. He's almost gone. So all those kids that grew up then with the pull-out posters from Slam magazine of Kobe and Shaq, it's about that time. It's about that time. So Kobe will be all right, obviously. His first press conference after he announced his retirement, I contrasted it with Bill Belichick after losing that game, because Belichick hardly said 3 different words. You could tell he was pissed that they had lost a game that they felt that they had won. I think there were a couple calls, obviously, that Belichick was upset about, pass interference call or something late, and the hit on Gronkowski. So he was just about as tight-lipped as Bill Belichick can be, and that's saying something. Kobe Bryant, however, spoke 3 different languages at his press conference. Kobe spoke English, Kobe spoke Spanish, Kobe spoke Portuguese. Kobe spoke all those languages, and he slipped into them so easily and fluently. He had some, he thought, and there were a couple times in Spanish where he was trying to find the word you could see, but it was just so effortless for him. And he talked about talking to Giorgio Armani when he was 21. And mind you, Kobe grew up in Italy with his dad who played overseas. But he said he had the opportunity to talk to Giorgio Armani and talk about how he built his business. Let's think about the fact that a 21-year-old kid talked to the head of one of the most powerful high fashion labels in the world and asked him how to build his business. What did you do when you were 21? What did I do when I was 21? I was getting out of school and I was unemployed. I was trying to figure out where my next meal was coming from. I was trying to get a paycheck anywhere. I think I applied for a job at a take and bake pizza place, in Peoria. I think that's what I did when I was 21. And obviously, Kobe had those opportunities, but just where his mind was. So he hasn't done good things in his life. The Colorado rape case is still out there. That's not a good thing. That's why Dan said that he's just not. In Dan's words, he's a shit person. And the thing with Shaq and Smush Parker and Kwame Brown and Dwight Howard, Dan said he's a shit teammate. But I mean, Kobe's not going to be hurting after basketball. He probably won't coach. Guys that maniacal usually can't coach. Those great players, Oscar Robertson and the Jordans, those guys, they don't usually coach because they don't have time for, they can't understand it. Geniuses don't tutor at the library too much. They can't take it. They can't take it when people either aren't trying or don't get it. But Kobe's going to be set. Kobe Bryant will be just fine. Moving on to another bit of basketball, one of the great players now, what Stephen Curry is doing is absolutely insane. And, you feel like it's different because he's not contorting his body. That's the thing. He is, but he's not. Your Jordans amazed people because they went to the basket and they scored from seemingly impossible angles. They hung in the air longer than they ever should have. They took contact and finished. They flew for dunks. They were doing acrobatics, going to the rim, and it was amazing. LeBron James did the same thing, but he is just such a physical specimen of size. And he had the speed of a guy half that size, and he was making all these passes, and he was just such a hybrid of these players that came before. Going even further back, Jerry West just made shots. Oscar Robertson did everything. Elgin Baylor was a big guy who had that LeBron body, not the speed, but he was a shot maker. He was a basket maker. Wilt Chamberlain was just nobody had seen anybody his size with his athleticism since Mikan. You can tell I love basketball with all these names I'm throwing out there. And even Derrick Rose. We love Derrick Rose in Chicago because he did those death-defying drives to the lane. And he made these ridiculous shots, floaters. The shot that he made in Philadelphia in 2012 to win that game, his momentum took him out of bounds. And a shot that he probably should have shot with his left hand, he readjusted, faced the rim, put it up with his right hand over two guys, and made it. No glass, no rim, just net. And it was just awe-inspiring. What Steph Curry is doing is some of that, but it's not the same. He's not always going to the rim. He's shooting threes. But he's shooting threes where they tell you never to guard a guy. He's shooting threes from 2 steps beyond half court. He's shooting threes from the arena's logo sponsor, which is an easy 27, 28 feet out from the rim. And if you've ever shot a basketball, you know it takes some strength to shoot a three-pointer from NBA distance if you're just right by the line. If you're just right by the line, period. If your foot is on the line, it takes some strength. It's not just a flick of the wrist like if you're just shooting a jump shot from anywhere inside that arc. You've got to have some strength. And he shoots these shots not just 15 or 20 times in a game after running up and down the court, guarding someone, dribbling into it, trying to get away from someone, going through and around screens. He shoots these shots hundreds of thousands of times every year. Literally hundreds of thousands of times. It's like if you ever had a pedometer on from your first step to your last, and you would find out that you walked like 1,000,000 steps. It doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like you've walked 1,000,000 steps in your life today, but you probably have. You've gone up and down stairs and things like that. If you attached a tally, or if you had somebody doing the bouncer clicker, Steph Curry's probably shot 100,000 or multiple hundreds of thousands of three-pointers in his life. He's played basketball since he was a young guy, 8 or 9 years old, probably before that. And so I saw a clip. My boy Alberto put me onto a clip of the game that they played yesterday. The Warriors played yesterday in Charlotte. It was Del Curry night. His father Wardell Stephen Curry I was being honored for his time with the Charlotte Hornets. Wardell Stephen Curry II came in, probably a genius marketing idea by the Hornets PR department, to make Del Curry night the same day that the Warriors would come in, so Steph Curry would be there. Great move, classic move by the Hornets. I really hope they did that on purpose, because it's cool to see a father who was a great 3-point shooter without the athleticism being able to receive the honor and the support from the fans that watched him play, and have his son there who he grew up and watched and emulated and talked with and had this relationship with, and kind of had the same almost the same story that they were underappreciated coming into the NBA. Del Curry wasn't a high draft pick, but he played 10 years. I think he played 13 or 14. He was a stalwart. Teams could always find a spot for him. And Steph Curry, if you know Steph Curry's story, he's small. He was not recruited, and he ended up going to Davidson College. Shout out to Owen McGuire from Ignatius. He went to Davidson in North Carolina. They offered him a scholarship. He tried to go for Virginia Tech, where his dad went. They said no, he could walk on. North Carolina, Duke, they didn't recruit him. And Steph went to Davidson and tore it up in 08. He just tore it up. And that's when people started to take notice. But he was still small, and people were mad when the Warriors drafted him because they didn't think he could play enough defense, which, to be fair, he can't play that well of defense. He can get steals, but he's not a face-up defender. But he was small, he had ankle trouble, and he wasn't that tall. 6'2", 6'2" or 6'3" right now. But he's a shooter, man. He's a gun shooter in the oldest, illest sense of the word. He's a knockdown shooter. He's not a chucker. He's got game. And the way he has game is just that, when you get geeked when you see a guy dunk on someone because it's this brute strength show of force of overpowering someone. What Steph is doing is kind of like, they call them snipers in basketball, and I hate to use that term with all the gun violence that's been going around, but it's kind of like that. It's almost like the Flash, how the Flash has to beat guys where he runs so fast that he punches them over and over before they can catch him. He's just so fast. He's just getting guys before they can even get to him. He's just finding spaces and shooting. He's getting to the rim, and he's doing those contortion drives and making shots. He's finishing over contact. He's faking guys to places where they shouldn't ever go on defense. And he's just making it look so effortless. Steffortless, as they say on TNT. Dan had a really good description of it. He said it's like watching Eddie Van Halen play guitar. And if any of you out there are rock fans, and I looked this up too, Eddie Van Halen is a guitar virtuoso. He practiced long and hard, and he's honed his craft, and he's been voted the best guitarist of all time over guys like Brian May, the guitarist from Rush, over guys like Jimmy Page. And like I said, he's a virtuoso guitar player. And what Dan said is exactly how I described it. He played guitar, and he played these complicated riffs and licks without much effort, or it didn't seem like he had to work hard for it, where other guys would have to have that sweat and that concentration. He could just go up there and do it. And that's what Steph Curry is doing, man. And it gives hope to all those kids out there that shoot in their driveway for hours on end, who aren't never going to be that big, who aren't ever going to be that fast, who aren't ever going to be that tall. Go out and shoot. I'll say it to them too. Go out and shoot. And so it's really cool to see that, because there's a lot of kids who get told, who probably love basketball, not just in America, but in different places around the world, that, hey, you can't play ball because you're too short, you're too small, you're too slow. You can find a spot, man. If you really want to play, you can find a spot, but you just got to work at it. So there's your inspirational message for the day, I suppose. Moving over to the NFL, as we get back, we've passed a couple of the softballs now, and we're going to get into some of the deeper stuff. Also, want to thank NGSCSports.com